Welcome back, everyone. Is here. And today I've got some r/traumatize them back for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Wait. Before we start, does this interest you? This distinguished gentleman is now live on Makeshift.com for a grand total of $30. Link in the description below. Make sure you snag one before the time expires because it's not coming back. By the possums, 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 by the possums. Now to your regularly scheduled program. Book Gnome Noel. The break room is not your break room. We have a thief at our office. Mostly it's small things like sodas, snacks, frozen meals, and things most people wouldn't think twice about. A couple of months ago, I noticed my cereal, applesauce, yogurt, and sodas had all disappeared. Because of a previous issue, I always made sure my names were on each item, and because I'm very careful with my money and bring certain things to help me through the day, I immediately brought the issue up with the office manager. Her first response was, "Did you put your name on it? Did you actually see anyone take those items? Do you have proof someone in the office took these items?" When I wouldn't relent on the issue, she finally told me, "The break room is not your break room. It's a shared space. If you're concerned about keeping your food, keep it at your desk from now on." I wanted to call her out on this hypocritical stance because last year, don't keep food at your desk, put it away in the break room. But hey, cool. I got myself a backpack that keeps food chilled and kept stuff at my desk in my drawers. If other people got their stuff stolen, I didn't hear anything about it. Cue yesterday, when we had a small potluck at work. I brought myself a few Dr. Pepper Zeros. It's mostly the only thing I'll drink. And apparently, the manager had a few in the fridge as well, except hers were taken. She saw me drinking one and asked, "Is that my drink?" I told her, "Nope, I brought it from home." She demanded to know, "Is my name on it? Where did you get it if you didn't get it from the fridge?" My response to that was, "There's this amazing place called the grocery store that lets you purchase canned sodas. I bought mine there, and I've kept it up front with me this whole time." I even showed her the backpack with my other stuff. She asked if I knew who took her drinks. I asked, "Did you see anyone take the drinks? And do you have proof anyone took them?" She got snarky with me and told me that she shouldn't need proof about someone taking her drink since her name was on them. I told her my name was on my food also, but it didn't stop someone else from taking them. You have to remember, the break room is not your break room. It's a shared space. Maybe you should keep them at your desk from now on. Am I probably written up? I'm sure. Do I care? No. This place needs me more than that, and I'm already searching for another job. Add on. I didn't expect this much attention to my post, so thank you everyone for the comments, well wishes, and even the queries in the situation. Also, thank you for the awards, they are appreciated. Also, happy Turkey Day, folks, and here's hoping you are all off tomorrow. If not, and the urge to rage quit happens, may you go with it and find a much better and higher paying job immediately. Yes, the brilliant mentality of it's only really an issue when it starts affecting me. When I was working my first job, I had a somewhat similar incident to this happen to me, where one of the managers was constantly on her phone watching Netflix on the clock, and because she was a manager, she also knew where to be so the security cameras couldn't see her. What I also didn't know is that she was actively delegating her tasks onto me. Stockroom, froyo machine maintenance, soda machine syrup replacements, refilling the froyo candy trays out front. Anything that was supposed to be done by her, I had to also do, as well as doing back kitchen prep. When I made a complaint to upper management about it, it was, well, she's getting her work done, so who cares if she's watching Netflix? And it was then that I realized that she's only getting her work done because I'm doing it for her. So I stopped. I didn't have to come into work the next day. But next time her and I were scheduled together, the evil eye that she was giving me was just, ugh. I knew she got chewed out. That and the sudden lack of extra tasks being assigned to me. Kickapoo Juice. Call the older generation by their full legal name. Cheat code unlocked. My wife's uncle is a piece of work. Mainly I think he's mad at the world because things didn't work out for him. Never married, no kids, didn't adapt after COVID, and had to move in with his sister, my mother-in-law. She has her grandkids every other Saturday, and he's been gradually ramping up his opinion giving on parenting and other subjects the past few months. I let most things slide because it's not my house and I really don't care. Until Thanksgiving this year. My son wanted soda at lunch. Uncle decided to chime in that he doesn't need soda at lunch. I cracked the soda can within 3 seconds. This man then decided to say, "I said he doesn't need any soda." So I called him by his full government name, Dad Voice. My kids froze. My wife froze. My mother-in-law jumped a bit. He tried to speak and I said, "Nuh-uh, nope, zip it. This isn't a conversation." Insert full legal name again. He stuttered something about his mom was the last person to use his full name, so I replied with, "Maybe she should have used it more often. We're done." But he was disarmed. He was shaken. He was reminded he's just a little boy, and that's what we need to do to these folks. They aren't the dad. We're the dad. Gotta love the audacity of him trying to command what a child can or cannot have that's not even his. "I said he can't have this." Okay, well, it's a good thing you're not his parent then. So, I don't really know what to tell you, bud. I actually might need to start using people's full names in order to get their attention and to shut them down, because that is such a just bombastic move to use against someone. Because if you previously didn't have authority in that situation, it might give you that. It also might not, and might make you just come across as being an asshole, but goddamn is it definitely going to quiet the room down, that's for sure. I know that if I heard one of my relatives address someone by their full name, and it wasn't me, I would be out of that room immediately. Because I just know that person is in trouble, and I should definitely not be here. Okay, pay $6.990. Server thought creme brulee shouldn't be burny, so I gave her a menu education. I'm 27, pastry chef at a high-end restaurant in Portland. I do the dessert menu. Been here for 4 years. Went to culinary school in Paris. The whole deal. So, we hired this server named Ashley maybe 3 months back. She's early 20s, super bubbly with customers, which is great, but she started doing this thing where she'd come back to the kitchen and tell me how customers wanted their desserts modified. First time, she asked if we could do the chocolate tart without the gold leaf, because a customer thought it was too fancy. I was like, okay, sure, weird, but whatever. Played it plain. But then it became constant. She'd asked if we could make the creme brulee less burny on top. That's literally the entire point of creme brulee. She wanted me to do our Earl Grey panna cotta without the Earl Grey because someone didn't like tea. Just make a different dessert at that point. I tried explaining that the menu was designed a certain way. These were my recipes, but she'd do this thing where she'd be like, "But the customer really wants it," with this pouty face. And I didn't want to be the difficult chef stereotype, so I'd usually just modify it. It was getting ridiculous though. My sous chef asked why we were basically running a custom dessert operation. I said I don't know, trying to keep Ashley happy, I guess. Then last Saturday we were slammed. Full restaurant, 2-hour waitlist. And Ashley comes back during the dinner rush and says, "Table 8 wants the deconstructed apple tart, but can we put it back together because they don't understand why it's all spread out like that?" I was so done. So I just stopped what I was doing and I was like, "Ashley, why did they order the deconstructed apple tart if they wanted a regular apple tart?" And she got all defensive like they didn't know what deconstructed meant. And I just wiped my hands on my apron and walked out to table 8 myself. My chef de cuisine was like, "What are you doing?" But I was already going. I got to the table and introduced myself and said, "I heard there was some confusion about the dessert." They seemed kind of surprised to see me. I explained that deconstructed meant we were serving the components separately so you could experience each element. But if they preferred a traditional preparation, I could easily make them our classic tarte tatin instead. They were actually really cool about it and said, "Oh, that makes sense. We'll try it as designed." Walked back to the kitchen. Ashley followed me and was like, "You made me look bad." I said, "No. You were making me remake dishes all night because you weren't explaining the menu properly. That's literally part of your job." She complained to our manager that I went over her head. Manager pulled me aside, and I explained the whole 3 months of modifications. Manager was like, wait, you've been doing custom orders every night? When I told him everything, he basically said Ashley needs to actually read the menu descriptions and understand what she's selling before taking orders. They made her do a full menu tasting the next day. She had to try every dessert and learn what everything was. She's barely talked to me since, except for when absolutely necessary. But I spent years developing these recipes. You can't just crowdsource the menu based on whatever random request comes in. Also, maybe don't tell a pastry chef how to make desserts when you thought creme brulee was supposed to be soft on top. Something tells me OP is the most insulted about that aspect. Because personally, I found the whole conversation about the deconstructed apple tart to be wonderful. And part of me genuinely believes that Ashley was the one who didn't know what deconstructed meant. And that it was in that moment that she learned why it was called a deconstructed apple tart. In the end, this kind of, worked out, because they didn't fire her, they didn't really reprimand her, they just gave her retraining so she could better understand the menu, so that way things weren't constantly being sent back to the chef and needing them to rework or reorganize or redesign their recipes. I personally don't really know how complicated it is to be a pastry chef, but I can only imagine that it's pretty much just an art form, and needs a lot of patience, time, and practice for you to become, a master of it, let alone proficient enough for you to become essentially the head pastry chef within a kitchen. Spark Life! Manager thought I was sad to be leaving. Back in 2020, I worked as a housekeeper at a private hospital on an agency contract. I wanted to go permanent there, but the agency wanted the hospital to buy out my contract, and the hospital didn't want to. So, I ended up leaving for a permanent role elsewhere. Turned out for the best that I didn't go permanent, as a month or so before I left, we had a new manager, Cameron, start. The hospitality director raved about his experience from previous jobs, but this guy was the epitome of look busy and do fuck all. On my last day, Cameron came into a patient room that I was cleaning with a colleague to find me crying. The guy smirked and said, "Aw, Spark, are you gonna miss me?" I looked at him and said, "No, my cat died last night. My beloved 15-year-old childhood cat Checkers had been diagnosed with lymphoma only a couple of weeks earlier and started going downhill very quickly. And we had made the tough decision to let him go rather than put him through surgery and chemo." Cameron just went, "Oh," and scurried out of the room. No apology, and he wouldn't look at me for the rest of the day. P.S. cat tax in the comments. Edit, Reddit is being stupid and won't let me add a picture in the comments, so I've updated my profile picture to a picture of Checkers. Enjoy! And the photo is just a photo of Checkers sprawled out like an old man taking a Facebook photo. Good cat. Also, damn Cameron, she barely even knows you, and your first response to seeing someone crying is that they're sad because they're not going to be around you anymore? What a hell of a leap in logic, dude. Even if they were sad about leaving the hospital they were working at, it is a crazy jump to then jump in with the ego of, "Aw, are you gonna miss me?" No. Bro, I don't even know you. Just icky. Mature a sec. The time I traumatized a nosy neighbor with kindness and boredom. This happened years ago. Me and my wife rented a small single-room flat on the top floor of an old townhouse. A nice arrangement for a young couple, except for the lady living below us. She was a real thorn in our side. We immediately started off on the wrong foot because barely a week after we moved in, she knocked on our door to inform us that our toilet is leaking through her ceiling. She dragged us into our apartment to show us the wet ceiling. She was always polite, a seemingly nice lady in her 50s, but somehow full of vitriol. This was a serious problem, and the owners were out of town. So we apologized, and arranged a plumber immediately to prevent further damage. The plumber had to break our bathroom floor to check, and there was no leak anywhere. The building manager years later candidly told us that she does this with every new tenant, maybe to establish some kind of dominance or to collect insurance. Who knows? After that, she frequently stopped us to complain about everything. "You're stopping too loud." We had carpet everywhere. "You hammered all day." We put together a small IKEA cabinet in 15 minutes on an afternoon. Stuff like that. She also liked to complain about other residents. "XY over there is selling drugs, you know." At one time, we had a friend over, and she knocked to check if I was home or if my wife was cheating on me. She was a general menace for 2 years, even though we kept the conversations polite and jovial at all times. The one thing she did not complain about was our cat. Instead, she creepily insisted that our totally indoor and neutered female cat is the bride-to-be for her male cat that roamed the halls all the time. At one time, she stopped me in front of our door. Yes, she just happened to climb the stairs there and started to explain something, and casually asked where I was born. Yeah, she was racist too, although never against us. And I noticed that she was not interested in the answer the least, and a plan was formed. I started to tell her everything about me in excruciating detail. Where I was from, how I was born. I was a miracle baby, you know. What happened to me when I was 3, how I felt during historic events in my childhood. All in a happy and confident tone, like we were good friends. Just a torrent of boring personal details and good vibes. I noticed she took a step down the stairs. I took a step down too. She wanted to interrupt. I started another tangent. When we reached the landing on the stairs, I positioned myself in front of her. I kept her for almost an hour. When I ran out of stories, I started to just make shit up on the spot. And when I let her go, we had already inched to her apartment door. I assured her that this conversation was so great that she can expect more riveting tales from me in the future. Next time we met in the hallway, I went out of my way to look happy and jogged over to her to chat. But sadly, she had urgent grocery shopping to do. Next time my face lit up as I saw her and waved, and she just fled back into her home. My plan was a glorious success. I scared her away, and with kindness and boredom, for good. She never really bothered us after that. She never risked another story hour with me. We lived there for a couple of years after that. We even got our poor cat out of her arranged marriage. You know, I never thought about using chronic ADHD lore dumping as a potential way to get people to stop talking to me. Normally it happens naturally, but using it as a weapon to get people I don't want to converse with, to just make them stop, seems it could be a blessing and a curse. And then capping it off with a fun little comment here. Professional Phone 409 comments, "You pulled a Robert Pattinson on her. He had an obsessed woman constantly stalking him, so he took her on a date. And deliberately bored the shit out of her by being just as lame and boring as he could manage. She left him alone afterwards." Negative Mix 1065. "I'll teach you what noise really is." I live in a small, quiet neighborhood of independent houses. My next-door neighbors are angels. There always seems like no one's home, even if they're a family of 5 adults with 3 children. Sometimes the children throw pool parties in the summer, but they're so adorable to watch that I would never even think about complaining. The same cannot be said, unfortunately, for the inhabitants of the house behind me. The grandma has a very screechy voice, and I understand she can't help it, but it still gets on my nerves when she screams for her dogs to come inside at 6 a.m. The son-in-law has a small under-the-table side hustle of repairing motorbikes, so you can hear motors running every single evening, plus the whole weekends as a bonus. The other son has the most loud voice I have ever heard. Sometimes I would eavesdrop because I thought he was gonna murder the entire family. Turns out he was just chatting in his regular tone of voice. The kids, of course, are screaming goblins. And since everyone screams in that house, and the older one has taken the habit of trying his father's motorbikes, even if he's not old enough to have a license, on his front lawn and up and down the street. I'm usually not confrontational, so I always kept my mouth shut, thinking that it's just how they are, and there's no point in engaging in a screaming match with them. Until one particular afternoon, where I reached my breaking point. It was a warm summer weekend, so I had my windows open. The neighbors decided to have lunch on the porch, since it was such a nice day. It was hell! Everyone was screaming at the top of their lungs, the kids were wreaking havoc, and the poor dogs were barking incessantly. Plus, I had just gotten off a rough night shift, so I was particularly cranky. I waited and waited for hours. 1 p.m. passed, then 2 p.m., 3 p.m., still hollering like air raid sirens. At that point, I had officially lost it. My husband is a metalhead. I'm more into rock music, but I know a thing or two about growling and screaming. So I turned my computer on, plugged in the most powerful sound system I owned, and pointed it directly at their house. got on YouTube and found a mayhem playlist. I blasted it at full volume for 10 to 15 minutes, then I turned it off. Nothing. Not a peep. Just cicadas singing. They never had an outside lunch ever again as far as I can tell. They're still noisy, but keep it at a reasonable level. Thanks, Varg Vikernes. No idea if I pronounced his name right. I've always wondered if it's more of like an environment thing that makes some people just entirely immune to being aware of how loud they're actually being, whether it's their actions or their voice itself. For me, I'm pretty much hyper aware of everything that I do that makes noise, whether it's even just pouring water in a cup or stepping on a stair improperly and making too much noise. I suppose a lot of that is also just because I was a night owl while growing up, so I had to navigate around my parents being asleep and not waking them up so they wouldn't be aware of the fact that I was up at hours I definitely should not have been. I don't know, but sometimes it really just does seem that people seem to be entirely unaware of how much noise they're actually making, and don't seem to even really care. And kind of as like OP stated in this post here, having a pool party is one thing where kids are, supposed to be loud and having fun, but just always being loud and being unable to recognize that? I mean, hell, I can only assume that people who live in apartments would have to be hyper aware of how much noise they're making as well. So I don't know. Not being aware of how much noise you're making just seems weird to me, and I just wonder how that happens. If it's just like an environmental thing or just actually not giving a shit. Impressive Walrus 87. When your boss has the situational awareness of a fruit fly. I've been lurking here for a while and thought of something that happened a few years back at my old job and thought I would share with the class. It's nothing too out there, but damn did it give me some satisfaction after the fact. I'm on mobile, so I apologize in advance for formatting. This is a little long, but was something that truly satisfied me to my bones, and I want to set the scene for everyone reading. And no, this is not AI slop. There's always that one guy. In 2020, I, female 19, worked in retail during peak Rona outbreak. I was an overnight stalker at a grocery store and often worked in cold areas, so I was frequently left alone to work. We had recently gotten a new boss, and just for chuckles and tradition, we'll call her Karen, female 50s. Just to get a feel for Karen, she was a micromanager. Obviously, we all had to wear face masks for health purposes. I worked in a cooler and had a worker in there with me. The fans were pretty loud, so he and I had to talk over them to hear each other. And the masks muffling our words didn't help much. The thing about Karen is, she has a heavy lisp, partially due to having braces. No judgment. A very nasally voice, and she has a tendency to mumble. When she came into the cooler, she began talking to us, and we understood absolutely nothing due to the fans and her mumbling and speech impediment. We had to ask her to repeat herself a couple of times because she would not speak up, nor were we allowed to exit the cooler. And she got mad and pulled her mask down to scream at us. Basically, our whole overnight team couldn't stand her or her attitude. Now, onto the actual story. My grandma died in August of 2020, not due to COVID. We were extremely close, and I saw her on her deathbed when I went to see her in the hospital. It was a miracle they even let me in, but I was grateful they did, because that was the last time I got to see her alive, and she was already cold to the touch. She had taken a sudden turn for the worst, and was gone by the next morning. Her death hit me really hard, and eventually, I had gone into a drug, coke, meth, etc., an alcohol bender, and honestly, I'm shocked I didn't end up hospitalized myself. I'm happy to say that stuff is well behind me, but it's mentioned to emphasize how hard of a time I was going through. My job allowed 3 paid days off for bereavement, so I was waiting until her service to take it, and take a couple of days after to mentally regroup. My mom had been texting me that evening, talking details. Hard conversations, but they had to be had, you know? I was out on the sales floor, stocking bacon, and left to my own thoughts. I eventually started to tear up because the day of her service was getting closer, and it was just a really hard time for me. All of my bosses were made aware of my loss, and they were all very understanding that I wasn't going to be operating at 100% because my mind just wasn't in it. Except Karen. Karen had been walking around, breathing down people's necks, as usual, and she finally came around to me. She started bitching about my cart not being done. I was still within cold chain and had been out there with it for no longer than 10 minutes. I also had to rotate everything I was putting out because first in, first out when it comes to food. So there was really no reason to snap at me when I was still moving at a pretty decent pace. The thing about me is, I'm not confrontational, but I do not take kindly to yelling due to CPTSD. I'll probably cry or be angry in silence and just sit there and take it. Overall, I was a very quiet and kind of timid person at that point in my life. Karen began grabbing boxes and passively aggressively stalking less than 2 feet away from me, because screw the 6-foot rule, I guess, and noticed I had tears rolling down my face. She looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" I wiped my eyes with my sleeve and kept working. "I'm thinking about my Nana. Her funeral is in a couple of days and I have to pick out flowers for her casket. Her birthday was supposed to be in 2 weeks," I replied. Karen actually puffed at me, and I looked up just in time to see her rolling her eyes at me. "Well, just don't talk about that. It's not hard," she snapped. I kind of stared at her for a second, not really able to believe she just said that to me. I wanted to slap the metal out of her mouth. Instead, I slammed my box down and walked away and went to the bathroom and sat on the floor to have a good cry and just gather myself and calm down. A coworker witnessed the interaction and came in to check on me, but left after a couple of minutes so I could just have a moment alone. After my bereavement, I came back to work and I was a little quieter and steered clear of Karen. Just looking at her instantly made my blood boil now, but when forced to interact, I pretended nothing happened and continued to be polite. Another thing about me is that I use humor to cope with trauma and pain. This is important for this next part. Fast forward a couple weeks, and on my day off, I came in to shop with a friend. We had gone to Garden Center and picked out a beautiful orchid for my grandma for her birthday. I was still celebrating because it's what she would have wanted, and she loved orchids. As I was walking toward the front checkout, I was admiring the orchid when I heard that nasally nails on chalkboard voice. Karen. "Oh, getting an orchid? How pretty!" She was standing next to our boss. Her supervisor. Karen had her mask pulled down like a chin strap so she could drink her water, but hadn't pulled it back up. "Yeah, it's for my Nana," I replied happily. I was trying to stay positive, and I knew Nana would have loved what I picked out. It's important to note that Karen's supervisor was also aware of my grandmother's death and had even given me this really sweet memory box before I went on bereavement and a note offering condolences from the store. It was really nice, and the box was made of wood and leather. "Well, I hope she can keep it alive. Those things die quick," Karen said. She kind of said it with a little laugh that irritated me. Her supervisor turned to her, and before he could say one singular word, I spoke without thinking. "Well, considering she couldn't even keep herself alive, I don't think it's gonna be her cross to bear," I said. I had absolutely zero emotion in my voice. My friend and I continued walking to the front, and in passing, I saw her supervisor's eyes get really big while Karen stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. I think I heard a straggled little, "oh," come out of her. My friend was holding her breath, and until we got far enough away and just started laughing. Eventually, I heard Karen's boss had chewed her out for being insensitive toward her employees after he found out about our interaction a couple weeks prior, and he just doubled down on her after her comment about the flowers. After all that, she at least pretended to somewhat care about the employees and their struggles. She retired a year later anyway and now sells life insurance. Was my response petty? Yes. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. I ended up staying with that company for 5 years and promoting to management, and it was bosses like her that made me hell-bent on being better and prioritizing my team's mental and physical well-being over numbers. And my team thrived because they knew they had someone in their corner that genuinely cared about them. Fuck you, Karen. What a crazy concept that if you actually treat your team members with respect and support, they'll actually want to work. And they'll actually be more productive because they'll feel like they're a valued member of the team. Also, I do wonder how much of this is also an age thing. Because Karen is older, they think they know more, and they feel like that they have every right to talk down to their younger team members. I know that this isn't everyone who's older than their team members that, act like this, but I have seen enough times to where I do know that this can be a symptom of some of the conflicts like this that'll pop up. And now for my favorite comment under this post from Trebuju. "Hi, scientist who works in a fruit fly lab here. Fruit flies have always been kind enough to not make me cry, and have never disrespected my grandma. I will not tolerate the slander. Don't forget, today we're launching the 3 opossums in a trench coat blush. Coming live and fucking, yeah. But you should definitely buy this blush. It is totally not 3 opossums in a trench coat. Totally not. You should definitely allow this completely non-conspicuous, oddly shaped, distinguished gentleman into your home, who will certainly not lay claim to your pantry. This is in fact 3 opossums in a trench coat who will in fact lay complete desolation to your fridge, pantry, and potentially garbage. On sale now!